Hello. Well, actually today's the 29th, but we did meet on the 28th. I was just waiting for the video files to translate them into chess.com analysis boards, but that marks the end of the September chess league, and overall I enjoyed the event very much. It was something that I have, it's a new experience for me, and I do enjoy playing over the board a lot. Um, I think I'll talk about what I've learned about playing in that so far. But to briefly recap the day, I played one game against Anthony. Elite, no, did I? In total, I played 3 league games against Anthony. I played 2 casual games against Tony, and then there's a kid who's just like stopping by. His name was Jeremy, very young kid, and he should have crushed me all 3 games, but he blundered one game, um, which was really funny. I'm gonna make a separate video about the casual game against Jeremy, the younger kid. Like, I don't know how old he is, but he needed mom supervision to an extent. So, you know, he's a kid. He's definitely not a teenager. Well, I don't think he's a teenager. He looks way too young to be a teenager. But it was him and his friend. I forgot the friend's name. It was these 2 really young kids. They were playing chess, and the mom was at like the pool hall right across. It was funny. So I'll talk about those games in a separate video. And you should watch that video because it's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. I'm just gonna go over the 3 league games that I played against Anthony, and then kind of just recap basically my whole experience with the league itself. So let's get into the games. Because today's the last day of the event, I went back to my roots and practiced what I prepped. So Anthony plays the French, so I'm going into my Papa Ticulot Gambit. I will just call this the PT Gambit for short, because that's the first letters of the people that it's named against or named after. So he plays DE4, Knight C3, Knight F6, Queen E2, basically just putting pressure on the pawn. In this setup, he can never add a second defender after he plays Knight F6. So I'm gonna win this pawn back eventually. He develops with Bishop E7, long castle. I should note that after I take here, it's actually not advisable for black to take like this. And we talked about this last time we met, where giving me this queen on E4 just creates a lot of problems, because Bishop D3 is coming, and you either have to play G6 to stop it, leaving your dark squares weak, or you play F5, which looks really awkward because you're going to have backwards pawns like this. And maybe I'll target this pawn later with moves like this, and Bishop C4, maybe even like knight here, like that. So that was something that we went over last time. He continues with B6. I just developed Knight F3 and Bishop B7, D6, Knight D7, or Knight B D7. And here I noticed that, this bishop is pretty strong, right? If I want to move this knight, he may be able to take here, and then I would have to take with the G pawn later, because I know I'm going to move my queen somewhere. So I wanted to just protect this pawn way deeper in the future, which turns out wasn't really the best way to play. You can see it's already getting better for for black. Material is equal, so it's one of those positional things you just have to be able to see, which obviously I did not. He continues with A5. I play A4 just to stop any pawn storms coming down this way. Queen E8, I didn't really know what he was trying to do with Queen E8. Maybe he wanted to get off of this file, but I'm not really getting rid of this pawn anytime soon, so that was definitely an odd move. I play H4 thinking I can try to attack his king side. I figured, okay, it's just his knight here. His pieces are a little blocked off, so maybe I can try to get something going over here. Computer says, no, you're stupid, that doesn't work. But such is life. So he takes my knight on e4, and the key difference from the previous position where I talked about I could put my queen here and then bishop here is that the pawn's in the way now, so I don't actually have this attack anymore. So I take with the pawn. Well, obviously I can't take with the queen because the bishop guards, so I had to take with the pawn. Knight goes back to f6, or his first knight, second knight. The other knight goes to f6. I play e5. It's a common idea in a lot of e4 positions, more so in the opening, where if a knight lands on f6, you may be able to kick it with e5. So obviously his knight moves. And here I played queen d3. I don't really remember what I was trying to do with queen d3. I just remember my bishop sucks really bad, and I'm trying to find a way to activate it. So this was like kind of the start of me trying to do that. And it's kind of difficult because my queen doesn't really have squares, right? The knight's covering these squares, this diagonal. All right, so knight covers these squares. This diagonal is a little scary, so I don't really want to put my queen there. And of course his rook is coming, so it's like even worse to try to find a spot for my queen. I go forward with knight g5. Obviously there's a mate threat here. I figured if he trades, it's kind of fine because I'll get an open h file and I should be okay. So he takes my knight, I take back. He plays queen e7. I should have realized the whole point of queen e7 was to take the pawn with check and then defend his h pawn. At the same time, I saw I can't really just play f4 because then he takes with the knight, and I have to move my king again, or my queen again. So I don't know why I just blindly played rook h1, and this is kind of where the start of all my problems began. This is like the true turning point of the game where Anthony was able to actually capitalize on my inaccuracies. So he takes with check. And I didn't realize this came with check in the game. So when I saw it, I was like, wait, what are you? Oh. So I had to move my king. And now I'm just worse. Rook d2 apparently was the best way, but even then it's not great. It's not a great position, but anyway. So king b1. Queen g6 is kind of offering a queen trade, which I don't know why I accepted the queen trade. I thought maybe in the future with whatever pawn he takes, maybe because one of his pawns is doubled, it might be able to be blockaded, maybe. But we'll find out if that's actually going to be the case. So he takes with the f pawn, which is really interesting, because I really thought he was going to take with the h pawn. Right, because this open file isn't that scary. I don't have enough attackers to actually abuse some kind of rook h8 sacrifice. Amazingly, computer says this is equal now. Which I wonder if Anthony actually somehow knew. But like instinctively, I would probably take with the h pawn to get more pawns towards the center, so you could try to support something like f4. I mean f5. But wow, so rook e1, knight b4, bishop c1. What? Huh. And this is equal, but then he took with f pawn, which is better. I guess it opens his rook up, and I do have a weak pawn here, so I guess that makes a little more sense. Yeah, okay, I see it now. Yeah, that makes more sense. And of course in the game I played f3, which turns out to be a huge mistake. Apparently I was supposed to play king c1, which I can't understand, because if I play king c1, I thought he was just going to take my pawn, and I'm worse. But apparently this is turning equal because of c4. Rook d f8. And you give up your knight? Why can't you move the knight? Rook dh. Oh, his knight. Okay, I see. His rook is hanging. Wow, okay. So he can't actually take my pawn. Oh, okay. Wow. All right. That's crazy. All right. So f3, because I thought I had to defend my pawn. He plays knight e3, which kind of forks my bishop and rook, but not really, because I can just move my rook out of the way, and I'm attacking the knight now, and he could trade off here, which he does. But then I just take back, and I thought I was fine here. I'm still down a pawn, but you know, maybe in some endgame I can hold. Maybe. Problem is he has rook d2 pressuring this pawn, and I played g3. Computer says rook g1 is better, but I don't know why I didn't play this. Yeah, I'm not too sure. I think my plan was to try to blockade with the pawns, like blockade all of this, and then you later use my rooks to defend, but oh well. So we get a whole big exchange on f3. I played bishop a3 trying to get counterplay, and after rook d1, bishop d1, it's equals, or almost equal, it's minus 0.8. The correct move is bishop e7 now, which I saw, but for some reason didn't play. I thought going for this plan of gobbling all the pawns wouldn't work because he would storm here, but maybe it would work. But anyway, bishop g4. I'm starting to run my king over this way. I thought I needed to use my king to stop these pawns with supporting this one, and then try to win his pawns. Well, obviously not on d6, but something like this. But as I run my king over, it just gets worse and worse, because for some reason I didn't see that he's going to take my pawn on c2 and gobble the rest of them. I tried my best to get counterplay, only now playing bishop e7, which is too late, because he's already accumulating advantage. He's pushing his pawns in response to my bishop, and we get this whole big exchange. So obviously I'm lost, but again, in my mind, I'm thinking maybe there's some formation where I can just blockade all of these pawns, like in some crazy manner, and still eke out a draw. But as we keep moving the pieces around, I realize he's going to try to protect this pawn and push, well, obviously push it. So I figured, okay, let me bring my king over to try to shoulder him out and reroute my bishop this way. None of it actually works. As you see, I'm just going to skip forward to the end of the game here. He pushes the pawn, which actually deflects my king away from shouldering out his king. And there's no way for me to stop this pawn, right? So right now my king is nicely placed because it's stopping everything. But the problem is I need to stop the pawn, and I can't. So I take it, but that lets his king come in to support his other pawns, and I just resigned here because there's basically no stopping him getting a queen and him eventually winning the game. He says his endgames aren't very good, but maybe I should have tried to force a draw, but I just didn't think it would happen, especially like a queen and king endgame is one of the first endgames. Well, maybe not the first. It's the first endgame that people learn that is only with one piece that isn't the king. So I figured he'd be able to win this, right? Because it's just take, and his pawn's going to promote, right? Or if I go here, it's the same thing. So I ended up losing this game, which was kind of rough. I felt like it all kind of just started from way back here when he took with check. Or not this one, this one. You know, I just dropped the pawn for free, and I just, for some reason, I didn't find the correct defenses anywhere. Yeah, so I was kind of disappointed. But at the same time, he's obviously learned more how to play against this better, which was pretty evident in the opening where my bishop was really stupid, right? Because I play queen e2 to win the pawn back, it actually blocks my bishop from doing anything. So that's kind of where that went. And I can't really go bishop b5 because c6 happens, and if I want to keep my pawn outside of this diagonal here, like before my queen gets there, he's just going to chase with b5, and I'm just worse. All right, he has a very easy attack now on the queen side, and my bishop is basically forced back to e2 if I want to keep it outside, but then I don't actually win the pawn, and my knight can't even go to f3. So he's gonna play like h5, and I'd have to like figure out some way to like do this, but this just looks really bad for white. So maybe I need to not play this gambit, or I need to figure out a way to get my bishop into the game after something like queen e2. So I'll probably practice that in the future, or like study this in the future, because I definitely had a worse position in like 10 moves, even though it wasn't like clearly obvious as to why it was worse. But you can see here it's move 11 and it's minus 1.6. Like, how is this that much worse? Well, I mean, it's that much worse for white because my pieces are stuck here, but you know, it's just like this just didn't look right to me. I saw this in the game and I briefly remembered this was part of my analysis, but just this doesn't look right. He's gonna take here, and then I'm not much better. Let's move on to the second game. I have black this time around, so let me switch this over. As for the actual game, we get the short variation. I played I play pawn e6. He plays bishop e2. Knight d7, supporting c5. He castles. I push c5. c3 is very common. Knight e7 is a move. Two purposes. One is to bring it to c6, to kind of put more pressure on the center here without needing this knight to do it. Right, this knight going here supports c5, so that if, you know, let's say for example, I played c5 first and then knight c6, the difference is that if I try to play knight e7 now, knight ge7 now, he can take this pawn and then try to play for b4, so like something like a3 b4. Let's go back to the actual game. I take on d4 just because I know he's going to take back with the pawn, and I'll get my rook onto the open c file. And I thought this is just fine for me. Computer says it's basically zeros, so I'm pretty fine with this position here. b3 is a strange move. I forgot that he likes to do these kinds of like maneuvers where he fianchettos like the other bishop that hasn't developed yet. So when I saw b3, I was like, oh yeah, he likes playing like this, but I couldn't figure out exactly how to punish it. I don't think there is a way to punish it very well. Computer says bishop c2 is the best move here, which is really okay. Like, I would not play this, but life goes on, right? I start with knight c6, which is fine. So he fianchettos the other bishop, and I try to get my bishop onto a decent square so I can castle. I'm putting pressure on this knight here, which I don't intend on taking, but it's just kind of there to be annoying. a3 to kick my bishop. I stay on the diagonal, and then he plays bishop b5, trying to trade this knight off, which makes sense because this knight is pressuring the pawn, and I'm eventually going to try to start playing stuff like queen b6 or even bishop a6 so I don't get trapped. And just like pressure this pawn. I'll move this bishop, and maybe I can even like somehow bring this knight over here and like this knight back over here or something. I don't know. I castle and he trades. I was thinking here maybe I should take with the rook. Computer says it is better, and that was like the other idea of putting the rook on the c file, is so that I can eventually double up my rooks, or even let's say for example get the gun, you know, this formation being Alkine's gun, and just completely cover the c file. I'll put my bishop on a safe square here, and I can still outpost my knight on c4. So something like this. Here I have to find another way to route my knight, but you know, this position should be fine. Going back to the game, he plays b4 to kick my bishop out, so I move back. I still have pressure on the d4 pawn, but I don't really have enough of it to carry out an attack on it, or you know, I don't have enough pieces attacking that square, unfortunately. It's kind of hard to do so now that some of the pieces are traded. Knight b3. I know he wanted an outpost here on knights on c5, but obviously my bishop and knight are still there, so that wasn't really going to happen. I played a5. I don't remember exactly what I was trying to do here. I think I was trying to break apart the pawns and get some open files for my rook and queen, which I do end up doing eventually. So he trades off my bishop, which you could argue is probably not something black wants. Like, black has complete control of the light squares with the pawn, so maybe I should have kept my bishop around. But my plan in this position was basically try to control these files and look for pressure on the pieces around here. And I'm just going to fast forward because it's a lot of shuffling and trying to find the right position. He does try to land a knight on c5, but I immediately take it. He takes back with the rook. Makes sense. You don't want to break apart your pawns like this. And here I'm just trying to put pressure on his pieces around. So like vague pressure on the rook. I'm going to threaten to capture the bishop. He moves the bishop, which, you know, earlier in the game, a few turns ago, I actually should have not allowed this. So rook c, b7. Can he not still do this? Oh, he drops the pawn. I see. Okay, so I did it the wrong way, or I didn't play this fast enough, so now he actually does get to solidify this. And from there, it's just a very locked position. I can trade one pair of rooks, which I thought was like, maybe it's okay and it'll be a draw. But yeah, so I basically went for the draw here to trade off all the pieces. I figured this was going to be a blockade and I can stop this pawn because I can probably get my bishop onto this diagonal, or like even to b5. But then I put my bishop here. I remember I wanted to push pressure this pawn, which, I mean, obviously he just moves it. But from here, things actually start turning for the worse. Apparently white is better now. I think it's because my bishop isn't actually able to stop the pawn because it's on this diagonal. And we'll see here, it starts getting worse and worse. I locked the center down, but I failed to realize a tactic here, which is, well, I wouldn't say it's part of it's a tactic, but the big problem with my position is that my king is no longer a piece. It's basically stuck in this triangle, or I guess more like this trapezoid. I can never push my f pawn because he's going to take and have another passed pawn, which is a big problem. And additionally, well, I mean, I'm just down a piece, right? I'm down a king, which is a weird thing to say, but my king can never enter the game. If I ever play king f8, I immediately lose to rook c6, discovered attack on my king, and my rook is hanging. Right, so if, say, I go here, boom, and I'm just losing. So I saw that as we got to this position, and I was thinking, ooh, this might be really bad. I need to get my bishop over here to stop the pawn. And then I think it's a draw because we probably won't be able to make progress. And furthermore, it might just be a complete blockade. So I try to route my bishop around, and apparently this is already a big blunder. And I was supposed to play rook b8 first. Bishop c3 or d2 works. And only now bishop c2. Ah, okay, yeah. Okay, so I started with bishop c2, and you'll see why I needed to play rook b8 first to kick the bishop this way. So he tries to push the pawn. I'm desperately trying to get my bishop over to the side of the board and stop it from advancing. He pushes, and I try to stop the pawn with my rook. He plays rook a5. It's threatening my bishop and also protecting the pawn, so I need to obviously play this, which is what I was trying to do this entire time. And now we see the point of why I needed to play rook b8 first to kick the bishop over here, or even over here. I can't let him get to this square because it's going to protect the pawn, and I have no way to stop it. He's eventually going to be able to bring this rook over and basically promote his pawn. So he actually needed to start with a7. Right now, now it's a bit of a problem because what he can do is bring his king, sack sack the rook for my bishop so that his king can actually come into the game. He'll move his bishop here, so let me just make a random move. So it would be something like this, right? I can never push my pawn. What was this? Oh, he needs to play here first, right? I can never push this pawn. Right? Oh, yeah, okay. I can never push the pawn because he can use his king to stop it. Again, my king is completely cut off from the game, and he can just sit here and wait. So something like this, and I just have to wait. Right? I can even try to move my king over, or my rook over, but I'll never be able to sacrifice because he's going to promote. And eventually what's going to happen is the king gets here and he's going to promote. He takes, I take, or yeah, so we're eventually going to get to something like this. And if he plays it correctly, it's basically I'm just losing. He'd do something like that. And now I'm forced away because I can't stay here. And then he gobbles, and he gobbles, and I'm losing. Crazy. Right? So, crazy. And you've probably seen the evaluation spoiling what happened in the game, but he started with bishop c5, and now it's a draw because I can take the pawn. We trade. He's trying to bring his king over. I offered to draw like here because I figured there really wasn't much to be done. And here we agreed to the draw because my king, so obviously my king is stuck in this box here. His king can never capture any of my pawns. And I'm just going to sit back and forth and just do this. Although I do wonder, can he do... this? Oh, wow. Okay, so he can't do that. c5 check. Forcing this king, let's say, there. And then I get a pass pawn. Wow, okay. So I haven't analyzed these games beforehand. I just wanted to like recap them first, just to show what happened. But wow, that's crazy. It is a draw. I just realized, like, can't he do the same thing that I showed earlier where he puts his bishop here? But no, there's c5 check, discovered check. That's crazy. Now I get a pass pawn. Okay. So this game ended up in a draw, one of the few draws. I think I say that all the time for some reason, but genuinely I feel like a lot of games ended in draws here. You know, I was almost losing, or I was losing actually, but he messed it up at the very end. And yeah, so this is the third game that we played. Again, this is a league game, and so far in my most recent like 4 games, I am 0.5 out of 4. So 2 losses to Wayne, a loss to Anthony, and a draw to Anthony. So I'm kind of rattled. I don't want to go back into another French because I had a worse position in the last game. And I didn't, well, I knew I dropped a pawn, but I just felt the entire time that my position just was not good. So I decided to switch it up and try to play an opening that I've been slowly working on with d4. And you'll see here as the game goes on, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3. b6 is an odd move to me, but it fights for the diagonal, so that's fine. And now you'll see what I'm trying to play here. I play g3, bishop b7, bishop g3, bishop g2, sorry. I'm playing the Catalan. I know the Catalan is not an easy system to play. In the main line where the pawn is supposed to be on d5 already instead of the bishop being fianchettoed, there's like 10 moves you need to study on like the 9th move. I can't say that I'm learning the theory for all of those lines, but I am playing it in a relatively system-based approach that you know, I'm kind of just like playing chess. Like, I'm not really trying to rely on theory, which, I feel like I should rely on some theory, but anyway. So I'm trying to play the Catalan against Anthony here, and you'll see what happens in the game. He goes for a second fianchetto system, and this is what I noticed. I had this like instant of a thought, this fleeting thought in my head that he really loves these fianchetto systems, whether it's on one side or both. So I'm wondering how to deal with this, but anyway, he fianchettos the other bishop. I play queen c2, a common Catalan move, trying to protect and prepare e4. Castle, e6, or sorry, d6. I didn't really know what he was trying to do with d6, or maybe he was trying to develop the knight this way, but I figured this might be okay too. I don't know. I finally push e4. I know I have enough defenders. He only has, well, he has 2 attackers, so it's fine. So he does play knight bd7, and now I push e5, trying to kick his knight around. Apparently this was not the right move, this was a mistake, and I was supposed to start with bishop f4. Bishop f4 didn't strike me as that good because he can play e5 himself, but computer says d-e. Oh, well, he's just losing a pawn if he does this. Okay, so e5 was just never a move. Interesting. But at any rate, I pushed e5 immediately, thinking I could get some pressure on his knight here and kick his pieces around. And I have a big space advantage as well, so it looked good to me, but apparently not. So d-e5, d-e5, he retreats his knight to e8, and I just knew automatically this had to be wrong. Why exactly it's wrong, I didn't really know, but I figured something about that move has to be wrong, and I should be able to capitalize on it. It's just a matter of how. I played bishop f4 now, thinking I needed to defend the pawn. And I mean, it is hanging. It was hanging, so arguably it's not a bad move. And computer says this is second best move. Bishop g5 is more accurate because he has to move his queen. And I guess f6 is not really something you want to play here because I'll just take. So he continues with c5, which is fine. I look at it now and I'm thinking that kind of blocks your knight in, but okay. Rook fe1, queen c7. Again, trying to pressure this pawn. Bringing both of my rooks in the center. This has to be good for me, right? Like, my position should be very good. Like, I have rooks on an open file and well, it's still a closed file, but they're in the center. My queen has some nice vision. My knight can try to jump in later. Maybe not here, but yeah, my position just looks fine. I can play b3 to solidify the pawn structure here. Everything should be fine. So rook d8. I played queen c1, trying to trade off the bishops. It's apparently a mistake, and I was supposed to play bishop takes, or sorry, I was supposed to play knight e4. Knight e4 I understand, but I figured I was going to lose a pawn here. Can he not take this way? Ah, his rook hangs at the end of it, because the knight's, I see, the knight is in the way. Can he trade first? So it's like queen takes c1. Wow. Wow, in between move knight f6. Interesting. And now I'm worse. Huh. Alright. So queen c1 was a mistake. He continues with a6, which I didn't think really did anything. So I mean, I played a4 just to stop b5. I didn't want him to get space on the queen side, which I didn't even need to do, because if he pushes, like, I can just take, and it's fine. So yeah, I guess a4 was really not necessary. It was kind of just like instinctual to try to prevent b5. Knight b8, I know he's trying to reroute his knight. I go for this bishop trade, which I thought was correct because, you know, generally you want to trade off these bishops in fianchettoed systems. But apparently I'm not supposed to do it in this position. So bishop g7, knight g7, h4. I think the problem is that I'm still in attack mode when I just need to play more positionally and try to constrict him rather than go for an attack. I think that was the big misconception with this opening here. You can see all of these like typical ideas in attacking positions don't work here. So I need to probably just change my mindset on how to approach this opening and the positions out of them. He plays knight b4, which I thought was fine. I totally missed the fact that there's a pin or a fork coming. I only saw knight a2 in which I could take, and I was like, okay, fine, that's fine. So I was like, okay, whatever, I'll play knight e4. I was thinking, okay, I can put my knight here, get this bishop out of the way, and then whenever I can move this knight out of the way, now my bishop has a lot of scope. And it's kind of what you want in the Catalan. You want this like open bishop to try to put some pressure on the position here. I think even that plan is not even that good anymore because there's nothing the bishop pressures on this diagonal because all the pawns have moved forward. So maybe this idea wasn't even as strong as I thought it was. So here what happens is he plays knight e4 and I blundered a fork. And I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna go down in exchange? Really? I have to trade this off? I don't want to trade this off. This sucks. I don't like this. Like, damn, why do I suck at chess? And I've been slumping in chess recently. Like, I've just not been playing well, and I just miss these like really simple things. And I'm not sure what's been going on with me lately, but it's been rough. I don't know, like I couldn't explain why I've been playing so bad. So he plays knight e4. And as I am looking at the exchange and I'm thinking, okay, is there really nothing better in this position? And that's when finally the practice kicks in and the voice in my head kicks in. Daniel Naroditsky's voice pops into my head again for some odd reason. And he says, well, he says it and it's in a different context, but the phrase is, if you find a good move, look for a better move. Here I'm thinking, okay, well, instead of exchanging, do I actually have a good move here? And if you want to pause here and find the computer saying mate in 3, find the mate in 3, which I did find in the game. The move is knight f6 check. It's a bit of an in-between move, but I mean, obviously it's forced mate because only move is king h8. And now I just bring my queen over to h6, which is funny because if I hadn't traded off the dark squared bishop way earlier in the game, this wouldn't be possible. But now it is. But I don't think that justifies that move, right? That doesn't justify the move, but it actually worked out in the end. And here you should be able to see that any move that black makes, I am going to checkmate on h7 next turn. So this is how the game ended. So overall, I went 1.5 out of 3 against Anthony today. And I can actually show you the leaderboard. Hopefully it doesn't... Okay, good enough. So this is the leaderboard that we've been using to keep track of like people's ratings within this little system. I was on top prior to the whole week. I was at like 1090, but then I lost 2 games to Wayne, and the problem was that Wayne was extremely underrated when I played him, so I lost like so many points. It might also still be provisional, which may affect things, but yeah, it just... I lost so many points playing Wayne that day, and then going 1.5 out of 3 against technically a lower rated player probably bumped me down a little more. And I think Anthony just also played more league games today in between the times I was playing against Jeremy and the kid Jeremy, and I also played Tony in a few games as well. I didn't really mention that. So yeah, this is the final standings. It's only second place. I thought I was good enough to be first, but you know, if I hadn't lost to Wayne on Tuesday, and then the 2 games against Emmanuel like a week ago or 2 weeks ago also really messed me up. So yeah, I definitely think I could have gotten first place here. Although if Wayne had played more games and showed up as often as me and Anthony did, he would probably be on top instead. So, you know, second place isn't the worst thing in the world. I'll take it. And yeah, that kind of concludes the September Chess League. So overall, my thoughts, I had a good time with this whole experience. I thought, you know, playing over the board in a time control that is slow enough to let you think, but fast enough to not have games take too long is pretty good. And, you know, everyone that showed up seemed pretty happy to just play chess. There wasn't any, like, drama that happened at all where, like, people were, like, upset or anything. Like, it was, like, people play chess, you know, they had a good time, win or lose. It's, like, you know, it kind of sucks to lose, of course, but you kind of try to learn from it and life goes on. I do wish there was an increment with time control, what did I just say? I wish there was a time control with increment that doesn't lead to extremely long games, because, you know, these rapid games always end up taking 15 to 20 minutes, which is fine. Like, that part isn't the problem. You can't win a time scramble by playing better moves. You have to win the time scramble by being faster, which I don't like. There's one example where I think, again, it was me versus Anthony. We got into a drawn endgame again, right? Like, just theoretical draw. The pawns can't move. The bishops are just going to dance around. We both had 5 seconds on the clock. And I think I had, like, a full second less, technically. And it's like, he could have won if he just moved faster than I did. And vice versa. That concept, I don't like that concept. You know, I feel like it can lead to very cheap wins. I don't think it has happened, because usually the games are decisive by that point. But again, it's more equally matched players, it could become a problem. Like, me and Anthony, that situation has almost come up like 3 times. Actually, against Wayne, you know, both times I got into time trouble. I knew I had no increment to rely on, so I had to play fast, and that's how I ended up losing. Like, 1 to literally I actually ran out of time. And the second because I made a bad move because I had less than 30 seconds and he still had a minute. So it's those kinds of games, especially when you're on the losing side, that feel really bad, and that's why I wish there was an increment. What they should do exactly, I don't know. You know, maybe I wonder if 5+3 is short enough to keep games under 20 minutes while also having increment to not make games be lost on time. Because 3+2 is probably going to take 10 to 15. 5+3, I'm not sure. It might end up taking like 15 to 20, but I don't know. I don't. Someone can do the math on average time and average whatever. So, yeah, overall, it was a good experience. I hope more people show up more often the next time it happens. I do wish there was a different time control with increment. Whether it probably wouldn't be rapid anymore though. So I don't know if people care about that or not. But yeah, that would be my biggest gripe with the league. They also said it was going to work differently when they announced it, and then they ended up doing a ELO leaderboard thing, which, like, I don't really care about the fact they switched it to a leaderboard thing, because I actually didn't understand their initial plan on how to do their rankings or whatever. But Anyway, yeah, so that wraps up the September chess league at Brooklyn Game Nights. I do intend on playing their USCF rated Blitz tournament on October 12th. Problem is, it's 5-0, meaning 5 minutes on the clock, no increment. So we'll see how that goes. I'm gonna start practicing 5-0. And I still need to decide if I'm actually going to commit to it. Let me just say that, because I don't want to buy a membership for USCF just to only use it once. But, you know, yeah, it's the whole money. Money is the problem in this situation and in life. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, check out the other video that I'm going to upload about playing against Jeremy. And I hope you liked this little series of recaps. Until next time.